Yeah. I mean, and if you talk about crazy, I mean, that was crazy. Don't get me wrong. How is it possible for people to storm supposedly one of the most secure buildings in this country?
Yeah.
Our government's in there having a session and protesters storm the Capitol building and a woman ends up getting shot.
Yeah.
How the hell does that happen?
This just proves what I've been saying. Our government is dysfunctional. A lot of our people that's elected are incompetent.
Yeah, y'all knew this day was coming. It's almost like y'all wanted it to happen.
I mean, look at everything that's going wrong in this country. You had Black Lives Matter. You had Antifa out there protesting. Why?
Lawmakers grateful to officers who protected them.
People were fearing for their lives, making calls to their families to say goodbye.
But also demanding answers.
Why were they overwhelmed? Everyone knew this was going to happen. Why weren't they tracking social media? Why didn't they erect the barriers around the Capitol that are present now?
One problem, not calling up enough personnel, says a former D.C. police chief. The city and the National Guard say they sent help as soon as possible, and backup eventually arrived, but sporadically and in small numbers at first. In June, by contrast, federal guards were out in force well ahead of Black Lives Matter protests. Also an issue, not anticipating how many protesters would come.
These right-wing groups that made it very clear that they were going to be there. I mean, everything was in place. How could you be possibly caught off guard?
Also under scrutiny, how the rioters were treated. Some officers criticized for giving way too easily, or one even apparently taking a selfie with the mob. A far cry from how Black Lives Matter protesters were dealt with by federal forces in June, when they were violently cleared out of the park in front of the White House.
I think it's just an example of the double standard. Obviously, Black Lives Matter's protesters were perceived as very threatening, and for some reason, these weren't.
That's why we have people storming the Capitol building. It's because our government sucks. It's because our media sucks.
That's why we have people storming the Capitol. It's because the media. Right now, you understand that these two boneheads are conservative media darlings. And so understand that there is a such thing as conservative media that these two white men are a part of. Yes, again, I have called them white men despite the fact that they have African heritage. I love how that pisses off conservatives and other white supremacists. You can't accept that it's just a culture and that there's no such thing as a white and black race. These men accept white culture, and that just simply makes them white. Now, something that is very crucial here is they ask, well, how could this have happened? It almost seems like they wanted it to happen. There's all these protests going on in the country, and why are these protests happening? What's going on? Exactly what's going on is the hypocrisy of white supremacy, of white nationalists, of our police departments across America. You see the difference in how protesters are treated. Now, you'll say, oh, well, Black Lives Matter protesters weren't peaceful, and so let's miss all that bullshit. Show me where there are selfies being taken with Black Lives Matter protesters who are destroying property, who are committing crimes. You don't see the police ushering in Black Lives Matter protesters to tear up retail stores or anything like that. But here within our nation's capital, you see the police letting them in, taking selfies, and not taking the threat serious, despite the fact that the FBI has already said that this is one of the worst threats that our nation face.
Y'all keep pointing fingers. Oh, look at these horrible Trump supporters. Oh, how un-American. No, I mean, they're not horrible people. They say it's un-American. This is the most American thing you can do, evidently. I mean, the left's been doing this for like the last 4 years, and y'all just call them peaceful protesters. And this one commentator was saying lies have consequences. No shit. Why do you think we have people protesting? I mean, just think about it. Y'all have lied for years. Now y'all trying to twist things around like this whole thing about fraud is just a conspiracy theory and that it's a fantasy.
President Trump claims the election was stolen. The assertions range from specific local allegations to constitutional arguments to sweeping conspiracy theories. But over and over, the courts rejected these claims, including all-star judges whom the president himself has nominated. But my colleagues, nothing before us proves illegality anywhere near the massive scale that would have tipped the entire election. Nor can public doubt alone justify a radical break when the doubt itself was incited without any evidence. When the doubt itself was incited without any evidence. When the doubt itself was incited without any evidence.
We would just like the opportunity for the media, the politicians to show that this was a fair election. That's all we wanted. Just prove to the American people that it was a fair and honest election. Ted Cruz came up with a great idea. They should have just formed an electoral commission. Let these allegations be investigated. And if they're investigated, then we can all see if it was true or not. I mean, on the left, you should okay, if you feel this election was fair, well, let's form this commission so we can prove it. Instead, y'all didn't want to prove it. You just wanted to call everyone conspiracy theorists. Y'all didn't do y'all's job. Y'all just stayed with that narrative y'all pushed.
That's your responsibility. You're supposed to prove to us as elected officials that we have a fair and honest election. So what's wrong with taking 5 people from the House, 5 people from the Senate, 5 Supreme Court justices?
The voters, the courts, and the states have all spoken.
Yes.
They've all spoken.
Yes, they have.
If we overrule them, it would damage our republic forever. This election actually was not unusually close. Just in recent history, 1976, 2000, and 2004 were all closer than this one. The electoral college margin is almost identical to what it was in 2016. If this election were overturned by mere allegations from the losing side, our democracy would enter a death spiral.
And if, let's say this was a lie, what Trump's saying, y'all could have made him look like a fool if y'all would have did y'all's job.
If this is just a fantasy and conspiracy theories,
you could have
show the evidence.
Show
us how stupid Trump is.
You could have did that, but you didn't do that. You just called it conspiracy theories, and you called Trump supporters idiots for following him. And the man feels that the election was stolen from him.
And y'all have a responsibility to all the American people.
Nobody give a fuck about his feelings.
It's up to y'all to prove to us that that was an honest and fair election.
An attorney representing President Trump in one of his dozens of lawsuits challenging the 2020 election moved to withdraw him from the case on Thursday, telling a federal court that the president used him to, quote, perpetrate a crime. Philadelphia-based attorney Jerome Marcus asked the court to allow him to withdraw, citing concerns over Pennsylvania's professional conduct standards for lawyers. Marcus wrote that, quote, the client has used the lawyer's services to perpetrate a crime, and the client insists upon taking action that the lawyer considers repugnant and with which the lawyer has a fundamental disagreement.
One of our great founders was Thomas Paine, and he wrote the book, The Age of Reason. This reason is what our nation was founded on. Don't nobody give a fuck about your feelings. The president has to produce the facts and evidence on why he feels the election was rigged or a fraud. If he has none and he's continued to say he does, then he's the fucking moron. And so are you for listening to him.